Hello BookTube, welcome back to my 2026 library tour. This is the final part of my 2026 library tour, and I will begin with Edmund White and his novel A Boy's Own Story. Edmund White was, for the later quarter of the 20th century and the first quarter of the 21st century, one of the major voices in gay American literature. And A Boy's Own Story is foundational in that reputation. This is the first in a trilogy of novels about a gay man coming to terms with his sexuality and eventually living his life openly. I have not read this novel yet. I just recently added it to my collection. Although I think I had a copy of this novel about 20 years ago, because I remember having one of White's later novels, A Married Man. And I think I might have had A Boy's Own Story as well, but I can't be sure. But I know I did get rid of both of them and had wanted to add them back to my collection, and so I finally did so with A Boy's Own Story. Next is The Vivisector by Patrick White. This is a major Australian novel. It's about a young man, an adoptee, who becomes a famous artist. Have not gotten around to it yet. I have been wanting to read something by Patrick White for ages, and I just recently added this to my collection a few months ago. Next is Nest of Matches by Amy Whitmore. This is a wonderful collection of poetry. I really enjoyed it. It is published by Autumn House, which at the time I picked this collection up was distributed by the University of Chicago Press. A few years ago, there was a sale on, I think, for Pride Month. The University of Chicago Press did a sale for poetry collections and fiction by gay and lesbian authors, and I picked this collection up during that sale, and I've really enjoyed it ever since. I know she has one more collection out that I want to pick up, but it is fairly difficult to find. Next is The Picture of Dorian Gray and Other Writings by Oscar Wilde. So this is a mass market paperback omnibus that includes The Picture of Dorian Gray, Lady Windermere's Fan, Salome, An Ideal Husband, The Importance of Being Earnest, and The Ballad of Reading Jail. So a novel, 4 plays, and a long poem. I've had this mass market paperback for ages. I picked it up from Book People when I lived in Austin 20 years ago. And I also had a few years ago a standalone copy of The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I am kicking myself for having gotten rid of because, hoo boy, I love that cover. I don't necessarily have the best reading relationship with Oscar Wilde to date, though. It should be said. Sticking with omnibuses, I have 3 plays by Thornton Wilder: Our Town, The Skin of Our Teeth, and The Matchmaker. Thornton Wilder was a major American dramatist of the early half of the 20th century. He was also a novelist as well. I have, from this anthology, read 2 of the 3. Our Town, which is a mainstay of American drama. It is about a small town over the course of about a decade and of the lives of two families, the town doctor and the town newspaperman and their children. It is incredibly moving. I reread the play a few years ago, and even then, it still brought me to tears. I more recently read The Skin of Our Teeth last year, which is a very weird play that sees a family both be dysfunctional in a not quite realistic way, but also as the first family and every family and the final family. It's really interesting play, and I'm glad that I finally did manage to read it. I have not yet read The Matchmaker, though, but I do want to read more of Thornton Wilder's work. Next is The Quick and the Dead by Joy Williams. I just recently added this to my collection, so I have not really read it yet, or had a chance to read it yet. Next comes Tennessee Williams, who I have, over the past few years, added a number of his work to my collection, starting with The Glass Menagerie. So this is the play that brought Tennessee Williams to prominence. It's about a family on the brink whose son wants more from his life and is put out by his mother. The daughter is an invalid who's looking for love, and a co-worker of the son's comes to visit. It has been quite some time since I last read this. I never read it in high school. I don't know if I read it subsequently, but I do want to get to it for a reread. I think perhaps even more famous is A Streetcar Named Desire. This is set in New Orleans and is about two sisters, one of whom is married to basically a thug, and the other sister has her own issues. And the husband Stanley and the sister Blanche kind of dance against each other throughout the play until something terrible happens. It has been quite some time since I read this. I read it for a class when I was in college. One of my personal favorite plays is Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, which I recently reread earlier this year and had reread like a year or two ago before that. And I read it sometime when I was in college, although I think I read this independently of any class. So this is a play set in about mid-century, 20th century, about a dysfunctional family coming together to celebrate the birthday of the family patriarch, Big Daddy. At this party, he receives, although the family tries to keep it from him, that he has terminal cancer. And so the family is jockeying for position as to who will inherit his wealth. And at the same time, one of Big Daddy's sons, his favorite, Brick, is having a dysfunctional relationship with his wife, who is more concerned about the inheritance than he is. She is the cat on a hot tin roof of the title. Next is another one of my personal favorites, Sweet Bird of Youth. This novel is set in Florida and is about a male prostitute who returns to his hometown with his fading Hollywood star girlfriend to try to reconnect with his childhood sweetheart in a delusional attempt to make it big himself. Things go horribly. I also have The Night of the Iguana, which is set in Mexico and is about a defrocked priest who has become a tourist guide, leading a group of tourists to a hotel run by his friends. Well, the wife of his friend who died before the play begins, and his trying to maneuver between his justifiably very irate tour group, the hotel proprietor who is in love with him, and a young woman who is a traveling itinerant artist who he kind of has a thing for. So it's a very interesting play. I read this when I was in college, independently of any class, and remember it quite fondly, although I have tried to reread it a few times over the past few years, and I haven't quite succeeded, but I really want to give it another go. And I would like to have more Tennessee Williams in my collection. Although I guess, given how it stands right now, I will probably stick with trying to pick up individual plays rather than the two Library of America omnibus editions. Which, I mean, I know I already have one with Sarah Orne Jewett, but I don't want to dedicate too much space to the Library of America. Moving on from Tennessee Williams, I have selected poems by William Carlos Williams. So this is a collection of his poetry that includes much of his work from The Wanderer of 1914 through to pictures from Bruegel in 1962, as well as selections from Paterson, which was his long poem that he worked on. So I read this first in a class back when I was a college student and rather liked the collection, and then I stupidly got rid of it, as I am annoyingly wont to do sometimes, and I regretted it and I wanted it back. So a few years ago I re-added this to my collection, and I'm quite happy to have it back. I reread it a few years ago, and I think I might reread it maybe in July. We shall see. Sticking with poetry, Before Our Eyes, New and Selected Poems, 1975 to 2017, by Eleanor Wilner. So this is a selected collection of Wilner's poetry, which is put out by Princeton University Press as part of the Princeton series of contemporary poets. This is a pretty good collection of Wilner's poetry. This is all I have by her. And I'm kind of, the more I think about it, the more I'm curious that I don't think this is the only Wilner from the University of Chicago, Princeton University Press. So I wonder how exactly they managed to bring together all of her the selections of her poetry, since they probably were published with other publishers. But I guess that's not really all that uncommon, because quite a few poets ping-pong between publishers over the course of their careers. Um, this collection is in reverse chronological order. So it begins with the new poems from 2011 to 2017, and then works its way down to her first collection back in 1979 with Maya. So, okay, and then back to drama with August Wilson. I have Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which I picked up a few years ago when I was in the grip of a strong desire to pick up initially mid-century American drama, but it quickly expanded to just 20th century American drama. This is the story of a African American musician who is part of the touring band of Ma Rainey. This musician has dreams of making it big on his own, and over the course of the play, his dreams are destroyed, and he loses it and self-destructs. Really powerful play. It took me a bit last year to get into it, but I reread it. I read it in December and really enjoyed it. It blew me away. This year I read and picked up Fences, which is set in the... Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is set in the 20s. Fences is set in the very early, or sometime in the 50s, and is about a trash collector who, over the course of the play, sees his family destroyed due to his wandering eye and his conflict with his youngest son, and ultimately how his death brings the family together at the end. It was a very powerful, moving play. I really enjoyed it. Next is Cloud Street by Tim Winton. So this is another excuse me. This is another classic Australian novel. It is about two families who share a house. One family is rather laid back, and the other is more proactive. And the two families interact over the years. I will be giving this another attempt today. So I've had this novel for a few years now, and I tried to read it for an Aussie April a few years ago, and then I don't quite know why I bailed on it. But I'm going to give it another go this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to it. Ain't your turn yet. Next is 11 Inch by Mikhail Witkowski, translated from the Polish by W. Martin. So this is a gay novel from Poland. It is about two male prostitutes, one of whom is the 11 inch of the title, and it's about their journey from Vienna through to, I think, ultimately Berlin is where the novel ends. And it's set in the very early 90s, with the aftermath of the end of the Cold War. So I had a go at it a few years ago after I picked it up, and I need to give it another look. Maybe this June, because I think June is shaping up to be to have a kind of a theme. So next is a slim volume of poetry, Beachlight by Cyril Wong. This is a collection from Singapore. It's a long series of poems about the narrator coming to kind of realizing and coming to terms with his sexuality. It is published by Seagull, and Seagull is obviously distributed by the University of Chicago Press. Also, 11-inch is a Seagull book as well. It's been a while since I read this, though, so I'd like to revisit it. Stem by Stella Wong. So this is this volume of poetry from Princeton University Press, part of the Princeton series of contemporary poets. This was one of the two selections from not last year, but the year before, so 2024. I don't remember much from this collection. I don't think it really wowed me all that much. Sea Scraper by Benjamin Wood. This novel was longlisted for the Booker Prize last year in 2025 and is set in the 1960s. It's about a young man who works as a sea scraper, basically a beach shrimper. He has aspirations to become a folk musician. However, life is too close to the edge for him to try to make the leap. Things change when he meets an American who has come to his village to scout locations for a movie. Or at least that's what the guy says. This novel is beautifully evocative and poetic, and I really need to give it another look, because I think I was not fair to this when I first read it last year. Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. This is a classic of early 20th century literature. It's about a woman named Clarissa Dalloway who, over the course of a day, prepares for and execute a party. And over the course of the day, her thoughts are delved into, as well as the thoughts of a number of other people. So this is very much an example of stream of consciousness and is brilliant. Next is another novel with which I have some unfinished business, The Safekeep by Jelle van der Wouden. This was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2024. It won the National Jewish Book Award in, I don't know when, it doesn't say. And this edition does not note that it won the Women's Prize in 2024. It was shortlisted for the book in 2024, won the Women's Prize in 2025. So, anyway. So this is a novel set in early 1960s Netherlands. It's about a trio of siblings who, when they were children during the last days of World War II, moved into a house in the east of the country that their uncle procured for them. Over the years, the daughter in the family has become attached to the house, even though her older brother is set to inherit it. The three siblings have a caustic, toxic relationship with the main character Isabel being particularly nasty to her older brother's girlfriends. And this is the case for, I'm blanking on his name, Lewis. His latest girlfriend, Eva, who, because he's going on a business trip for a month, has forced his sister to allow Eva to stay with her for the month. And things progress from there. So I had a go at this novel last month, and I didn't quite get on with it, and I want to revisit it because I'm not happy with that result. So the next three books are by men called Charles Wright. The first one is by the novelist Charles Wright. I have his collected novels, The Messenger, The Wig, and Absolutely Nothing to Get Alarmed About. So I'm really looking forward to getting to these. I just recently added this omnibus to my collection, as I did with the work of the poet Charles Wright, of which I have two. First up is Negative Blue, Selected Later Poems. This collection, I think, focuses on his work in the 90s or 2000s, something like that. I also have a more recent selected collection of his poems, By and By. So I think what Charles Wright, I get the impression is he is a very prolific poet. And about once a decade or so, he will release a selected collection of his work. So I have two of them, which would not be the first time I have done this. Jory Graham, I also have two of her selected collections of poetry. Sticking with poetry, the next batch of books are all by Mark Wunderlich, one of my favorite poets. First up is The Anchorage, which is his debut collection, and is very much a debut collection. It is a fairly rough collection of poetry. My personal favorite collection of Wunderlich's is his second collection, and the first one that I ever owned, Voluntary Servitude. I first had this about 20 years ago when I was in Austin from Book People, and I stupidly got rid of it. And a few years ago, I re-added it to my collection, and I have loved it ever since. I will not get rid of it again. And I will stick to it. I also have his more recent collections, The Earth Avails, which is pretty good. I quite like it. And I also have God of Nothingness. I don't know if Wunderlich has anything else out, because this collection came out about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, or maybe more. So I might go look and see if he has anything new. And I think I might make a project of rereading him maybe in June. But we shall see. Next is another novel with which I have some unfinished business. Taiwan Travelogue by Yang Shuangzi, translated from the Mandarin by Lin King. This won the National Book Award 2 years ago for translated literature, and is currently shortlisted for this year's International Booker Prize. This novel is about a Japanese writer who travels to Taiwan for an extended visit so that she can write a book about her trip. While there, she meets and befriends and forms a deeper relationship with her translator, all the while eating copious amounts of Taiwanese cuisine. The novel is presented as if it were, in fact, the work of this Japanese author that has just been rediscovered. Again, I had a go at this novel last month, and I don't quite know why I set it aside. I'm very put out by that. So I will be giving it another look next month. In fact, I will probably be starting on this next week. Oh, may have to move somewhat, to reach the final books on this shelf. I returned to poetry with Tell It Slant by John Yaw. This is out from Omnidon, which is distributed by the University of Chicago Press. I have been wanting to read John Yaw for years. Ever since I first started looking at the University of Chicago Press and the various poetry collections that they have, whether published by the University of Chicago Press itself or by independent publishers that they distribute for. And I have to say, I did not particularly get on with this collection. I will revisit it, though, to give it another look, but I did not get on with it. Sticking with poetry, this is I Was Working by Ariel Yellen. This is from Princeton University Press as part of the Princeton series of contemporary poets. This collection was the other collection that came out with STEM by Stella Wong. I like this one a little bit better, but I need to revisit both of them. Okay, and I end with novels. First up is Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto, translated from the Japanese by Megan Backus. So this is a two short novels or long novellas. One of which is about it's been so long I've forgotten. I had a copy of this book decades ago, and I really enjoyed it. So much so that I picked up at least one or two other of Yoshimoto's works, all of which I had stupidly gotten rid of, and I am now making an effort to re-add them and the rest of her work to my collection. And finally, the last book that I will show you for my 2026 library tour is Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu, which won the National Book Award for Fiction in 2000, I think it was 2000. So this is a novel that is about a aspiring Chinese American actor who at the moment only gets bit parts. So on the one hand, it's about an actor trying to make it in Hollywood. On the other hand, it's also a novel about the fact that, in a way, we're all actors in our own story and in everybody else's story. And so Yu is playing off of that this his main character is acting in both senses of the word. I have not gotten on with this novel, and I've given it a few goes, but I want to give it another go. So, hopefully, I think it would be the third time, would be the charm. Anyway, BookTube, that ends my 2026 library tour. It's been a wild ride, so I think I will hold off on any more library tours until 2027. So, until then, BookTube, thank you. Have a great rest of your morning, and have a great day.